Thank you for tuning in to the Golden State Media Concepts football podcast, where we discuss the latest news, rumors, and games of the NFL and college football. As always, I'm your host, Jeremiah, and I am back again with another action-packed episode for you guys today. And today I would be most notably talking about Myles Garrett, the projected number one pick in this year's NFL draft. The Oakland Raiders have decided to give an extension to Jack Del Rio, and I will talk about Deshaun Watson and what scouts have been saying about him, about his draft stock. Well, let's start off with Myles Garrett, the projected number one overall pick this year. And there's a video that surfaced over the weekend, and it was from a interview session at the College Football Awards on December 8th that was broadcasted on ESPN. Well, it looks like he made kind of a playful plea on the video about playing on the Cowboys. So this is what he said. You know, I can't really play the video for you, but I can tell from the white quote from the video. It said, quote, "All right, I'm speaking to you, Jerry. Mr. Garrett, make it happen. Dak Prescott is leading our team right now. I need you to take Tony Romo, take a couple of picks, give him to Cleveland so you can pick me up. Please, I would love to play in Dallas. Just make it happen." End quote. So, he said all that in a interview session, but ever since this came out, he said it was supposed to be pretty much a joke. It was supposed to be taken seriously. And Myles Garrett was kind of caught off guard a little bit by all the comments and all the attention he received with this. He basically told people just to take a joke. And the social media producer at ESPN said that Garrett's comments were in the spirit of an upbeat event. It was supposed to be a playful interview. He was definitely in the playful mood. It was one of the most silly questions that he asked, especially about his interest in dinosaurs and so forth and all that. So it was just supposed to be 100% fun of an interview. And in a separate interview to a local TV station in Houston, which is KRIV, they posted on Twitter that Garrett said he would actually definitely like to play for the Browns. Garrett said, he doesn't really care who has the first pick. He just wants to play. And I think he made the plea about going to Cowboys. I think he made that because, he did grow up in Arlington. He did grow up a Cowboys fan, so he wasn't shy about that. He is projected to be one of the top picks. So he wanted, who doesn't want to play for the favorite team growing up, their hometown team, And, he is from Texas A&M. And, the thing is about this video is, should the Browns seriously consider drafting Myles Garrett now? After this video came out, are they questioning about his commitment to the Browns? Are they really going to question Myles Garrett right now? Are they going to question his character? Are they going to question, is he going to be a leader? Is he going to be a part of the change of the winning culture here? Because, the Cleveland Browns, they haven't had a whole lot of game-breaking playmakers there. They haven't. I know they need a quarterback, and there's really not a quarterback I don't know will go in the first round. And, Myles Garrett is one of those can't-miss prospects. He's probably one of the few can't-miss prospects in this year's draft. And I do think that it's very highly unlikely that the Browns are going to trade one of their first-round picks and give it to Dallas and, have Romo go to a rebuilding Browns team. Because remember, Romo's 36. He's not going to go to a rebuilding team. He wants to go to a contender. I do think that it's unlikely that the Browns would kind of alter their draft plans based on this video. And this video was filmed in December. It's February. And so I do think kind of think this kind of blew out of proportion a little bit. I think it did. So I just think it blew out of proportion. But, Myles Garrett said he wants to be the number one pick at the end of the day. He doesn't care if he goes to Cleveland, Chicago, or San Francisco. He doesn't care. He wants to be part of the reason why an organization changes to a culture. Cleveland, they have had a hard time finding a lot of playmakers, especially in the first round. They have, and they haven't had a lot of success anyway in the first round. But I do think this is one guy that they can't afford to miss on, because if you don't draft this guy number one, there's no doubt that the Niners are going to do it. There's no doubt. But playmakers are hard to come by for this team, especially in the first round. When I go to just from 2010 alone, Joe Hayden was taken number 7. He's still on the team. Phil Taylor, 2011, he's no longer on the team. Trent Richardson at 3. Brandon Whedon at 22 in 2012. None of them worked out. Barvakius Mingo in 2013. He did not work out either. Then you got Justin Gilbert and Johnny Manziel in 2014. Gilbert was just cut. He was traded. Manziel did not work out. Has a lot of personal issues. Then you go to 2015 with Danny Shelton and Cameron Irving. That is just 2 years ago, so they're still on the team. Corey Coleman was just drafted last year, so he's still on the team. I do think he's someone that is a talent there. But if you look at the history ever since 1999, when the Browns became they became an expansion franchise after the organization moved to Baltimore to become the Baltimore Ravens. They haven't drafted a whole lot of guys. Ever since 1999, there's only 2-3 players that actually worked out. When you think of, Joe Thomas, 2007 is still there. Alex Mack in 2009 became a good player, but he walked out of the team or free agency and went to the Atlanta Falcons. Became a huge part of the Falcons Super Bowl run. So, they haven't had a whole lot of. They haven't hit on a lot of players in the first round. They drafted, I think 3 quarterbacks in the past ever since 1999. No, they drafted 4 quarterbacks since 1999. They drafted Tim Couch. They drafted Brady Quinn, Brandon Whedon, and Johnny Manziel. So, quarterback is an issue for this team, but it's not really a strong draft class this year for quarterbacks. And, I will talk about Deshaun Watson later. But this is a can't-miss prospect that the Cleveland Browns, they just can't afford to do it. And if you pass on Myles Garrett because of this video that was taken in December, then you're probably going to set yourself back. And I do know you got 2 first-round picks. I do know that. But it's important to hit on these first and second-round picks. And a lot of game-changing players have been hard to come by for a franchise. So you have to start it from the interior and out. And Myles Garrett is probably one of the best pass rushers in college football this entire year. And I do think he can do that for Cleveland if he was in the right system. And I do think he can. I do think he'll be successful. I do think he can be a Pro Bowler right away. So you cannot afford to whiff on Myles Garrett. You definitely need players that can help you win right now, that can make an impact. And I'm not saying Myles Garrett is going to turn this whole defense, turn this franchise around. He's just not. I just think he'll be the start of establishing a change, and he can be part of the change. Just look at how Khalil Mack and Derek Carr changed Oakland. Khalil Mack literally changed the integrity of the defense there. Like Khalil Mack, that defense is horrendous. There's no leadership there at all. And look at Derek Carr. Look what happened when he got hurt. And so those are two guys that they got in the same draft in 2013, 2012, that became an important part for that franchise to turn around. So I do think that this is the year. This is a very important year for Cleveland because the second year of Hugh Jackson, I do think he is a good coach for this franchise. Second year for Hugh Jackson, you got 2 first-round picks, and you got to hit at least on one of them. And, you got a high pick in the second round. You could probably use that on a quarterback. So I do think this is a very important draft for the Browns, and it all starts with drafting Myles Garrett at number 1. You cannot miss Myles Garrett number 1. Do not let this video influence you at all, guys. Do not let this video influence you. You've seen the track record you guys brought in at number 1. Come on. Well, enough on the Cleveland Browns here. I actually, mentioned the Raiders a little bit, and I'm going to take my first break, and I'm actually going to discuss the Raiders and giving Jack Del Rio an extension on his contract. And I will give you my thoughts on that when we come back to the Going to Me Concepts Football Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Well, the Raiders made the playoffs for the first time since 2002, and they look like they are on track to get on the Super Bowl run next year. And they look like they're about to make a Super Bowl run this year until quarterback Derek Carr got hurt the second to last game of the year. But the future is bright for this team. They did make the playoffs. They did struggle against Houston Texans in the wild card game, but the team really knows how to win now. They know what it's like to be in the playoffs. They finally got a taste of the postseason. So everything should go up from here. And the Raiders wasted no time in extending the head coach, the guy that has helped them coach this team to be competitive, to a 4-year extension. Jack Del Rio got a 4-year extension from the Raiders over the weekend. And there was not details made about the contract, but team owner Mark Davis said in release that the Raiders had torn up Del Rio's initial 4-year deal and decided to extend him through 2020. Before Del Rio even arrived to Oakland was 3-13 under Dennis Allen, who got fired after an 0-4 start. And Tony Brown took over the team afterwards. And the year that Del Rio came, the Raiders improved to 7-9. And then they went 12-4 this year. So Del Rio has been the most successful coach that franchise has ever had. You can even just name, if I can go on the list. Okay, like Del Rio is currently 19-13. Dennis Allen's 8-28. Hugh Jackson in his 1 year was 8-8. Tom Cable 17-27. Lane Kiffin 5-15. Art Shell 2-14 in one season. Norv Turner went 9-23. Bill Callahan went 15-17. So this team has not had a lot of success, and I do think Del Rio is a very important part why this franchise turned around. There is an interview that's from Raiders legend John Madden had about I think a couple of I think in November, he told the San Jose Mercury News the team just needed a man. They needed an adult running them. And to an extent, that is really true. When you think of all the coaches that I named, there was a lot of young guys. There's a lot of new guys. There's a lot of inexperienced coaches. They just didn't work. Del Rio, ever since he got fired from the Jacksonville Jaguars, you see how that franchise has been. The Jaguars have not had stability at the head coaching position since Del Rio. So Del Rio, he was the last coach to take the Jaguars to the playoffs. And, I do think that Del Rio, when he was hired, I knew that he was going to be successful because he just has the look of a Raiders coach. He just has that classic look. And when John Madden had this interview with the San Jose Mercury News in November, this is what he said. Quote, "They tried the young guys, the new guys, the inexperienced guys, and that didn't work. When Jack Del Rio walks into a room, a man just walks into a room." So, to an extent, he's right. They needed a man, they needed a leader to coach his team, and that's what they're getting with Jack Del Rio. And, the year that Jack Del Rio came, they were actually, the year before that, actually. Carr and Mack were actually drafted the year before Del Rio came to Oakland. They instantly connected, and I do think that is a important part. But I do think this whole starts of the rebuilding process for the Raiders. I do think it started when the team drafted Khalil Mack and then they drafted Derek Carr. The fact that they got both of those two guys in the same round says a lot about how they did that year. And, when, Del Rio is 87, 84 in his career. And I do think he has his team on the right track. This is probably, even when Del Rio was in Jacksonville, he didn't have this team that good. He actually took the Jaguars to the playoffs twice, I think. I think the last time the Jaguars were in the playoffs was 2007. They haven't been back since, and he was fired 2011. But I do think the main problem with him in Jacksonville and later in his career there was that he couldn't find stability at quarterback. So that was the main problem there. He went 68, 71, and 9 seasons there. But moving towards the future here, Oakland looks like they're poised to make a Super Bowl run. And it looks like they're one of the favorites in the AFC now after the season that they had. Well, this whole thing turned around when the Raiders drafted Khalil Mack and Derek Carr, and then it happened in free agency when they brought over Michael Crabtree. Then they brought over a lot of guys on the offensive line to help, and then they had Del Rio. And I do, to me, this does say that coaching is probably the most underrated aspect of the game. If Del Rio is not coaching this team, I don't even know if the team would be competing as it did this past year. Just remember when Sean Payton was suspended that 1 year for that bounty gate. That team was not the same that 1 year that he was suspended. That team was not the same. The New Orleans Saints was not the same that year. The fact that Del Rio finished 7-9 in his first season, and they had 7 wins in the previous 2 seasons before that is impressive. So, in Del Rio's first year in 2015, they went 7-9. The previous 2 years, they won 7 games overall. So that's impressive in itself. I do think, I kind of thought Del Rio was going to win Coach of the Year. It's just because he brought this team back from pretty much. He's one of the reasons why this team came from the abyss. And I really thought he was going to win. I think him and Adam Gase were kind of going to win it, but it went to Jason Garrett. But who knows? Maybe this team will be in the Super Bowl next year, and maybe that'll be a reason why he gets back. But good things are ahead for Raiders, and despite if they relocate to Las Vegas or not, this team is going to be good for 10 years. I truly do believe that. This team is going to be good for 10 years as long as Derek Carr and Khalil Mack are there long term. Well, speaking of quarterbacks, I'm going to take my final break, and when I get back, I'm going to discuss Deshaun Watson and what scouts have said about him for this upcoming draft. When I get back to the Going to Me Concepts Football Podcast.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the Going to Me Concepts Football Podcast. And in the New York Daily News over the past weekend, beat writer for the New York Jets, Manish Mehta, wrote about Deshaun Watson and his daily mailbag, which is basically a roundup of stories of the New York Jets. And one of them talked about Deshaun Watson as a potential pick at number 6 for the Jets. And several scout stats meant to talk to, according to this report, said that Deshaun Watson is a second rounder at best. So that's what most scouts have told the New York Daily News. And he doesn't believe that the Jets would consider Watson at 6, despite them needing a quarterback. Me, honestly, I'm not surprised by that. He has been graded as a second overall, second round grade from several scouts, several analysts. But honestly, though, there's a lot of quarterbacks that have come out of the second round that have been really successful. Most notably, Derek Carr came out of the second round. Andy Dalton, who's been to the playoffs his first 3 years, went to the second round. And when you look at the quarterbacks in the first round, not a lot of them succeed right away. Maybe it's because of the pressure of them to succeed. The only ones that have succeeded that were the quarterbacks that drafted in the first round have been Andrew Luck. He was a can't-miss guy. Then you got the draft class in 2004 with Eli Manning, Ben Roethlisberger, Phillip Rivers. Michael Vick was the only quarterback taken in his year in 2002. That tells you a lot about that class. And when you look at the 2005 class when Alex Smith and Aaron Rodgers, those guys are still playing, even though Alex Smith was kind of inconsistent his first 7 years in the league. So, honestly, if I'm Deshaun Watson, do I want to go to the first round? Because honestly, though, Deshaun Watson is going to be drafted in the first round. I truly do believe that. I actually think he is the best quarterback prospect in the draft. I really do think. When you talk about the quarterback class this year, along the lines of him with Mr. Trubisky, Deshaun Watson, Deshaun Kaiser, Brad Kaya, you got Patrick Mahomes in Texas Tech, who probably going to be he's questionable prospect, playing in an air raid offense in college. I do think out of all these guys in the quarterback class this year, Deshaun Watson, in my eyes, is the best one. I do think he has the best chance to succeed in the NFL right away. But honestly, though, he needs to be in the right system. I do think there's a chance that Cleveland will take him at 12. Cleveland does have 2 first-round picks this year at number 1 and at number 12. So I can see him taking a quarterback with their second first-round pick. And if the Browns don't pick Deshaun Watson at 12, I can honestly see the Houston Texans draft a quarter. I can also see the Houston Texans draft him at 25. And if Houston passes on him, honestly, I think Cleveland can take him at 33, or the Niners can take him at 34 in the second round. So I do think there's going to be 3 quarterbacks taken in the first round. I do think Deshaun Watson should be the first one taken. I do think Mitch Trubisky is going to be taken as well, and Sean Kaiser. I do think those 3 guys will be in the first round, even though I don't think they are first round worthy. I still don't think Mitch Trubisky is worthy of a first round pick. Deshaun Kaiser, I don't think he's worth a first round pick. Deshaun Watson, I do see him as a late, probably early second round pick, but he's probably going to be taken in the top 10, honestly. In this report by the New York Daily News of the New York Jets taking number 6. So it looks like that's unrealistic for that to happen. So Cleveland, I talked about Cleveland taking Myles Garrett earlier. They can't pass on him. San Francisco, I really do think they will consider taking Watson, especially with Kyle Shanahan now here for being the new guy in town and, looking for a quarterback. There's still a lot of questions at that position, but I do think if Deshaun Watson doesn't end up in San Francisco, I do think he will have a chance to shine there because Kyle Shanahan is the type of guy that really plays to the player's strengths, and he'll be one heck of a guy to learn under, especially if a coach is on a contract for 6 years. So, he's probably going to be there for a while. But let's just say San Francisco will pass on him, which could happen. Chicago can seriously take a gamble on him. The Jets, I believe I think they're going to try to get Tony Romo. And then if you go down the line, Buffalo could take a chance on Deshaun Watson. Cleveland can take him at 12. Arizona, they're looking for the quarterback of the future for that team. Carson Palmer, I think, has at least 1 year left in him. This is probably the make-or-break year for the Cardinals anyway for a Super Bowl berth. So I can see him going to 13. And I can honestly see him go all the way down to Houston at 25. I don't see him going to Denver at 20. They did draft Paxton Lynch a year ago. They got Trevor Siemian there, who's going to enter his 3rd year. So, they have a lot of young guys that they like there at the quarterback position. And then I could honestly see him going to Kansas City at 27. I really can. And Alex Smith I think he's on the contract for about 2 more years. Alex Smith has been really good for the Chiefs getting to the playoffs, but, he just hasn't got him over the hump of getting to the Super Bowl. So I do think when Alex Smith's contract is up with the Kansas City Chiefs, I really do think they're going to move forward with him. They're going to move on from him. So I do think the right thing to do is to find a guy that they can groom now and sit behind. And I do think that Deshaun Watson sitting on the bench for 2 years in a winning environment in Kansas City can bode well for him. And, he can, I think he can learn from Alex Smith, because he is a guy that was drafted number 1 overall pick. He kind of had an up and down career. And I think that would be a really good spot for Deshaun Watson at 27 with Kansas City. And as for 2032, there's no way he's going to go to any of these teams. No way. So if he doesn't get drafted late in the first round, he's going to go in an early round. So honestly, there's really nothing wrong with him being a second round pick, because a lot of these teams have other needs. I wouldn't be surprised if Kansas City won't take a quarterback because they got needs. Houston, yeah, they got need a quarterback, but the biggest strength of that team is defense, so I can see them going there. And as for Cleveland, I kind of see them as the most realistic team taking Deshaun Watson, especially with them having 2 first-round picks, because they're going to take Garrett at 1. Can't miss guy. So I do think they're the most realistic team. I personally think San Francisco is going to go defense. I think Chicago might go defense too. I think Chicago is going to be in on the Jimmy Garoppolo sweepstakes. The 49ers will as well. But honestly, it'll be interesting to see. I can see Deshaun Watson ending up in Cleveland. I can see him ending up in San Francisco, Chicago, Houston, Kansas City. I do think Kansas City is kind of a team that people are not paying attention to at the quarterback position because, Alex Smith has been really good for them, but they just haven't got over the hump. They haven't got over the hump of making it past the divisional round. So, Deshaun Watson can be the quarterback for the future there for the next decade or so. But when I look at Deshaun Watson compared to the other guys in the draft, it looks like I honestly think Deshaun Kaiser needs a couple years on the bench. Mr. Trubisky may need a couple years on the bench. I do think Deshaun Watson is probably the only quarterback I think that can start right away. But he won't have a winning record because of the team he'll be on. If he goes to Cleveland, he's not going to have a winning record. If he goes to the Niners, he's not going to have a winning record. Chicago, not a winning record. If he goes to those teams, he's not going to have a winning record, but he will improve that offense dramatically. And that's what these teams need. They need improvement on the offensive side of the ball. But that's what I think about Deshaun Watson and this draft grade that scouts have given him. There's really nothing about getting a quarterback in the second round. A lot of good quarterbacks come in the second round. Joe Montana was a third rounder. Tom Brady was a sixth rounder. Dak Prescott was a fourth round. So, there's really nothing wrong with getting a quarterback in the second round anyway. Well, that's going to conclude it for my show today. I thank you guys for tuning in. Come back tomorrow. I will discuss any type of news that happens over the next 24 hours. I'd like to thank you guys for tuning in to Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. My name is Jeremiah. You guys have a good day and a pleasant tomorrow.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.